10 years ago this week, on Thanksgiving of 2005, the Gospel Broadcasting Network went on the air. And since that time, it has been airing the truth and nothing but the truth 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Many souls have been strengthened, restored, and brought to the Lord as a result of this effort. We could not have reached this milestone anniversary had it not been for the contributions of many individuals. Initially, when we think about the beginning of GBN, our minds go back to Brother Gilreath Sr., who has now gone on to his reward. GBN started as his dream. We think about the elders of the Highland Church of Christ who initially got GBN off the ground and who served as the overseeing eldership. We think about Jim and Janice Dearman, who did much of the legwork in the early days to raise the money and create the programming and everything involved to start this network. We think about the many, many generous brethren who contributed money and who offered prayers to help make this a reality. And of course, none of this would have been possible except for the grace and blessings of God. For the next hour, we're going to be looking back over the first 10 years of GBN and remembering events that brought us to this point. We're going to be watching some old video footage and interviewing some of the people who were an integral part in getting GBN off the ground. We invite you to join us as we look back over the first 10 years of the Gospel Broadcasting Network.
Words of life, beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life.
So good to have you guys here with us today. We appreciate you making the trip. And of course, we are remembering the early days of GBN. And you two gentlemen were a part of the early days. And we want to start this segment and actually talk about the dream. In the early days of GBN, we talked a lot about the dream because that was Barry Sr.'s idea to get GBN off the ground in the first place. And I want us to talk about that. Jim, tell me about the dream, the call that you first got from Barry about this idea that he had for GBN.
Well, as I recall, we were in Greenville, Tennessee. I was doing local work there, and he called. I think the month was April 2004, I think. And he called and just asked me what I thought about a 24/7 network, broadcasting the truth 24/7. And he was very kind to ask me to consider being a part of it. And it was the kind of opportunity, and of course I had a background in broadcasting. That was my major, communications at the University of Tennessee, and I had worked in commercial broadcasting. And now as a gospel preacher, to have an opportunity to be a part of a broadcast effort where the truth was preached 24/7, presented 24/7, was just an opportunity that I could not pass up. We were very happy in Greenville, but we felt this was an opportunity we couldn't pass up, and we just had confidence that Barry, with his vision and determination and ability, could get it done. He just instilled that kind of confidence in those around him.
When he called you and asked you to come and be a part, did you hesitate or did you just tell him immediately, I'll do it?
Well, I think I immediately said we would certainly consider it, but I'll never forget, he said, and I'll never forget, he said something like, and you'll be something like, we'll give you some title, something like program director or something like that, I think is the way he put it, but we just feel like you need to be a part of this, he said. And of course he had some idea of my background in broadcasting, I think, too, but I'll never forget when we went to Huntsville for that first meeting. Basically, the way that meeting evolved, before that meeting was over, I was kind of being introduced as the new program director of GBN, and Judy,
whether you liked it or not,
and Judy said, "You better go back home and sell your house." And I said, "I better go back and talk to the elders at Greenville," right. And which I did, and they were most gracious and understanding about the project because they believed in it as well.
Now, of course, we have Barry with us, Barry Jr. with us. Barry, tell us a little bit about your dad and about his dream for GBN and maybe about what took place in the eldership in the early days of this.
Well, as far as my dad's concerned, growing up in the household along with my two sisters, my dad, he was always stepping out doing big things. And I'm not just talking about in the church, but just in all different realms. So when Dad would say, well, I've got this idea, I want to do this or do that, we just kind of became accustomed to saying, oh, okay, well, here's the next thing he's going to do. And he had done a lot of big things through his life, but where he really excelled and really was able to succeed most of all was in the realm of the church and church work. But really, if you talk about Gospel Broadcasting Network and what a big idea it was, and it was and still is, but it even goes back before then when Dad began to talk with people about having a television program with a man by the name of James Watkins. That's right. And that's really where the roots were. And of course, he worked behind the scenes, built that program up, preaching the gospel with James Watkins. And so, once that was up and going for a period of time, he continued to think about, well, what else could we do? How could we make this even bigger? Right. And those are the seeds that eventually grew into the idea and concept of Gospel Broadcasting Network. And I remember Dad coming into my office. I was also the preacher at the local congregation in addition to serving as one of the elders at the time at Highland. And Dad was one of the elders, and he came in there and he talked to me. He said, what do you think about a 24/7, 365-day-a-year network, not just a program? And, growing up in the household as a kid, I mean, this was something else, that it was big, but, I didn't have any doubt that he could do that, motivating the people, getting people to buy into that idea. And so, he presented it to the eldership, and the eldership had learned down through the years that he was more than just a dreamer, that he actually would put these ideas into fruition, and so they got behind it, were very supportive.
I can remember him talking about the fact that the denominations of the world have their networks and they're on 24/7. Why can't we have ours? And when I go out now and do the GBN presentation, I always begin with a picture of Barry standing in the old building next to the row of monitors that we had there. And then I launch into that and I show some pictures of these people who were teaching error and say Barry's question was, why can't we have our own network? And of course, that was the beginning of the dream. Now, we've alluded to the Huntsville meeting several times already. Tell us a little bit about that meeting. Who was present? Can you give us some details about that?
Well, of course, I don't know that I could recall everyone who was present, but there were men there like Tom Holland. Winford Claiborne was there, and he brought at least one of the elders there from West Fayetteville congregation. They were very supportive of the network.
I believe Glenn Colley was there.
Dave Miller, I think, was
there.
Dave
Miller was there.
I think Bill Watkins was there.
Yeah.
Alan Webster was there.
Yes,
Remember
Alan was there. I do
Alan was
remember
there. We do have that documented. We have that record of who my wife did a very good job of keeping records of the meetings from day one and the rest of the history. But
seems like James Watkins was there.
I think James Watkins was there as well. It was a very positive and very supportive. It was just a very positive and enthusiastic meeting. Don, you were talking about the elders, and Skip McNutt, who was one of the elders there at Highland, had asked me to share some additional thoughts because he had done a segment for you this program, but he said he just had some additional thoughts and gave me permission to edit any way I wanted to, as we needed to for time's sake or whatever. He says, after a 10-year period of time now, the program is still thriving and very much alive with the support of sound brethren throughout the brotherhood. The programming is still very much sound, and those of us who supported the efforts of its inception still pray that it will continue to be an outstanding tool to reach those individuals throughout the world. And he says, with much love and hope for continued success, Skip McNutt. He wanted those additional thoughts shared.
I appreciate that. It's a very nice tribute to Barry from a fellow elder who served with him.
Exactly.
And of course, he mentions the programming, that it has remained sound. Much of the programming that's on GBN is the same programming that has been airing for not all of it, some of it has gone, but of course your program is still on the air. Of course, Barry is still on the air as well. And so we haven't changed at all as far as our teaching and doctrine. Never will until the Lord comes.
That's right. And that's why we know that with you at the helm as executive director, with the eldership, South Haven overseeing it, that is not going to change, and with all those who are involved with this work. It's a very exciting thing to think about. Mike Hickson and I were talking about this just last night. It's a very exciting thing to think about Barry's dream to get a network like this in place so that it could take full advantage of the advancing technology, which you are taking full advantage of now, and able to do even more, expand even more. But if the network had never, if the dream had never become a reality, then you wouldn't be in a position to take advantage of that technology.
That's
and
right.
Yet you are. And,
I absolutely believe that Barry was the man for that season.
No question.
He was oftentimes referred to as a dreamer. I think most of the time in a positive way. Some people scoffed as, referred to it as a dream in a negative way. But when we say it, we mean it in a positive way. This is a man that had vision and could dream, and that's what Barry was known for.
Well, I think he came into the kingdom for just such a time as this, so to speak, because not Barry Jr. alluded to his background in other endeavors, and that served him well. Then you add to that the preaching the gospel experience, and he was primed and ready to launch an endeavor like this, and he had the courage and faith to do it, and the ability.
Absolutely have to believe it was the providence of God.
That's right.
That put him in that place at that time.
I believe so. I certainly.
You know, on his desk there for as long as I could remember, he had a little sign. It was engraved wood, and it said "Dream."
Right.
And that little sign has come to really symbolize what he was able to do with GBN. And really, we talk about, Barry Sr.'s dream, but that's a dream that's not just his dream. Others share in that. It's our dream. It's thousands of people, thousands and thousands who participate in GBN in various different ways, support the network, do programming, do the work behind the scenes. It's everyone's dream now, and that's the beautiful thing about it.
I appreciate you saying that, because he had the idea and the impetus to start it, but it's brethren all over this country working together and all over the world working together to make this a reality. I want to talk a little bit about the promotional DVD. In the early days, we had the meeting at Huntsville. There seemed to be support for GBN, and then we had to get this thing rolling. And so the idea came about for a promotional DVD.
E. Claude Gardner was one of the ones. Tom Holland was one of the ones. Winford Claiborne was on the DVD. James Watkins was on the DVD. These were all giving, brief but very powerful and effective endorsements for the concept. And then we filmed it in Chattanooga and on site, outdoors at times. It was an interesting project, and Barry, he would always do whatever was necessary. I remember being on the top of Lookout Mountain doing one segment there, and we needed somebody to hold the whiteboard by my face as I was doing the narration, and Barry jumped right in there, did that while the fellow was doing the shooting of it. But I have to tell you, though, the interesting thing about that first promotional DVD, when it was completed, it was about 15 minutes in length. It was very professionally done. We were very pleased with how the brother had handled that production. But Barry was getting ready to take it down to the post office in Dalton, Georgia, and mail it from there to various places. He had a pickup truck, and he had all these DVDs in the back of the truck. And I said to him, and I think Janice, my wife at the time, said, "Barry, don't you need to tie those things down, and won't they fly out when you're on that interstate?" No, I think they'll be fine, he said. And so next thing we knew, we heard of his being on the side of I-75, watching cars come by, hitting those DVDs that had been scattered on the interstate, and the little click, click, click as they hit the grills of vehicles there. And we had a lot of fun out of that. He said, "Who knows where those DVDs went? Someone on a grill of a vehicle could have carried that thing to Texas or wherever." And my wife did a caricature, and we honored Barry before his death at a surprise gathering for him, and she had done a caricature very nicely done, of his driving down I-75 with DVDs flying out of the back of the truck, and it was quite a picture.
I had forgotten that.
I told Jim last night, I think we were talking about this, I said, I think they're still finding DVDs along I-75. They're just kind of tumble like tumbleweeds
We didn't lose them all,
through there.
but we did lose a certain number of them.
And we did a lot of those. I can't remember the number, but I'm thinking it was like 13 or 14,000 of those we mailed around the country.
A way in which the network was promoted heavily in the very beginning through these mass mailings of these DVDs.
Well, and again, that gets back to Barry's business expertise and background and his ability to know what would be required to get the word out to generate the kind of support that we would need.
Now, initially, what was the plan when GBN started and we had the dream of we're going to do this and we're going to get it out to the brotherhood, get it out to the country? What was the plan to make that happen? How were we going to deliver it?
Well, there was some thought, of course, and this was new territory for all of us from the standpoint of this kind of project. But the thought was, of course, satellite uplink, and the idea of the KU dishes, the small dishes that people could obtain that would be cost-effective, wouldn't be too expensive, and that we would uplink, from Crawford Communications down in Atlanta with the company we had worked with there. We also, of course, had some hope being able to get on DirecTV, Dish Network, and ultimately that just simply became a monetary issue. It just takes so much money, and we were not able to generate the kind of funds initially to be able to do that initially. That could still come, who knows? Yeah. But technology has changed so much now that you're able to get the network in so many places through the Roku, through the streaming, so through things that...
The internet has changed everything.
The internet has changed everything. And so in those early days, though, it was to be basically the satellite uplink, both with KU and with C-band, the larger satellite, to accommodate cable stations.
Right.
Because the initial dream was to also, and that became a reality to some extent, and it still is, to be able to approach cable companies and say, will you add GBN? For example, in Chattanooga, now where we live, EPB Fiber Optics carries GBN, Channel 152, and they are the #1 carrier, at least their billboard claims they're #1.
Some of those C-band dishes are still up and running today, so we are still using those C-band dishes.
Right. But the technology has changed. But again, it gets back to what I said, if the network had not come into existence, you wouldn't be here to take advantage of those technological changes.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. Now, Barry, serving on the eldership at the time that this came to pass, was this intimidating? Was the eldership concerned about the cost?
Well, we certainly heard those who would say it's impossible, you can't do it. I mean, Highland congregation is probably about 150, 170 at the time. And, some of the objections we got from brethren were, well, this is really something maybe a larger church should tackle, not a congregation as small as that. There were other issues that came up along the way, such as finances and all. But, we just never allowed those things to deter us. And this was kind of our attitude and the idea of my dad as well and all the elders. If God wants this to take place, it's going to happen. And if God doesn't want it to take place, then fine, it's not going to take place. And we just kept working, and when there were financial needs, and they were great, especially in the beginning, we'd kind of leave it in God's hands, and lo and behold, we'd have a door open. We just had to learn to walk by faith, put our confidence in God, and again, with the idea that if God wants this to happen, it's going to happen.
I absolutely believe that GBN exists because the Lord wants it to exist. It reminds me somewhat of the days of Nehemiah when they're trying to build the wall, and it seemed like an impossibility. In the early days, they had scoffers who said that it could not happen, and all of the challenges that took place, but the Lord wanted it to come to pass, and the people had a mind to work. And I believe that GBN has faced a lot of difficulties and ups and downs, and it exists here today I believe, going back to the providence of God and the Lord's blessings. And of course, we credit your dad for the dream, and we credit the brethren who have helped fund it and support it, and all the people that have produced programming for GBN. But ultimately, it's because of the blessings of the Lord that GBN does exist today.
Chattanooga, Tennessee. No wonder they call it the scenic city of the South. It is cradled in a beautiful corner of God's creation. But Chattanooga, Tennessee is not only a scenic city, it's a scenic city of souls, filled with souls, almost 500,000 precious, unique souls, created in the image of God, all rushing into eternity. Chattanooga, Tennessee is just one of hundreds upon hundreds of cities and towns across America and throughout the world, filled with those precious souls. A total world population of over 6 billion, and it's growing all the time. Statistics indicate that 5 precious souls are born every second, that 2 precious souls die every second. And with those statistics in mind, think about the year 2040, when the population will have doubled and will amount to 12 billion precious souls. Now think about those statistics in light of the great commission Jesus gave to the church. Go into all the world, he said, and preach the gospel to every creature. Is the commission still current? It certainly is, but the challenge is great. Can it be done? Yes. You see, Chattanooga, Tennessee is not only the home of some 500,000 precious souls, it's also now home to a big part of the solution for reaching those souls and souls across America and ultimately throughout the world. Gospel Broadcasting Network, a proposed 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week satellite television network, broadcasting the truth and nothing but the truth, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to the United States, part of Canada, and part of South America, and yes, with God's blessings and the help of faithful brethren, ultimately broadcasting by satellite to the entire world. This work is under the oversight of the elders of the Highland Church of Christ in Dalton, Georgia. A godly, faithful eldership with great vision. This monumental, unprecedented effort in the history of the church is now in production and ready to go on the air, hopefully no later than January 1, 2006. But the Highland Church cannot do it alone. It will only become a reality with the concern, the compassion, the love, and the contributions of faithful individual Christians and congregations throughout our brotherhood. We need your help. Think about the possibilities. They are limitless.
Paul said, preach the word. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1, and then he said, be urgent, in season, out of season. About 144,000 people leave this world every day through the door of death. Yes, but about 374,000 are born into this world every day. How will we reach the masses? TV is the best means of communication available today. And there's about 219 million television sets in this country of ours alone. Think of the value of a network, gospel broadcasting, 24 hours every day, 7 days a week.
I want to encourage what I believe will be a great, great work. The Gospel Broadcasting Network will not only reach non-Christians with the gospel, but will also have programming to edify and to encourage our brethren wherever they may be.
The Gospel Broadcasting Network will make a difference in reaching people for Christ. How else can we reach those who are hungering and thirsting for righteousness?
Hi, I'm Barry Gilreath, and we're here at the offices of GBN in Chattanooga. The management team of GBN is working hard to bring to television quality sound gospel programming for all ages as well as all walks of life. The elders that oversee this work, as well as those who preach and teach on the network, have one primary goal, and that is to teach only what is in harmony with the Word of God. As one preacher often states it, to have a "Thus saith the Lord" for all that we do and that all that we teach.
The GBN management is committed to producing a quality slate of programs to meet the interests and needs of all ages and stages of life.
Some of the television programs will include Truth for the World with Jim Dearman and Don Blackwell, James Watkins with Preaching the Gospel, Mac Lyon in Search of the Lord's Way, Winfred Claiborne with the International Gospel Hour, Don McWhorter with Bible Talk, Jerry Jenkins, the program The Living Word, James Seegers with Dayspring, The Spiritual Sword with Mike Hickson, John Shannon, and Gary McDade. Other speakers will include Tom Holland, B.J. Clark, Glenn Colley, Dan Winkler, Wendell Winkler, and mission reports from such men as James Andrews and Billy Bland. It's going to take a lot of money to bring the Gospel Broadcasting Network on the air. Our first year's budget needs are approximately $2 million. This is a tremendous challenge, but with individual Christians as well as congregations helping across this land, and with God's blessings, brethren, this can be done.
I'm standing here in the master control room of the television station in Chattanooga that we have contracted with to produce programs for the Gospel Broadcasting Network. We're very pleased to be in a facility such as this one because it's very important to us that the programs we produce be of the highest quality possible. The building that houses the control room will also contain offices for GBN, and in the future it will have a 5,000 square foot TV studio which will allow us to have an audience as a part of our production. In addition to what we produce here, we'll also be using other production studios, such as that of World Video Bible School in Maxwell, Texas, and Truth for the World in Duluth, Georgia. We also plan to have a certain degree of mobility. We'll be taking cameras on location to produce documentaries on such topics as the restoration movement and feature reports on sound mission works around the world. Brethren, it's a great challenge to think of producing continuous sound gospel programs around the clock. I'm very excited to be a part of GBN, and I know that with the Lord's blessing, multitudes of souls will be taught the truth of God's Word.
The International Gospel Hour has been on the air for more than 70 years. It reaches every county and city in the United States, a large portion of Canada, and of Mexico. Now the speaker on this program will become a part of the Gospel Broadcasting Network. Hundreds of other faithful gospel preachers will combine their knowledge, dedication, and passion for lost souls to reach the four corners of the earth on television.
In order to have the Gospel Broadcasting Network available nationwide, several steps are required. First of all, the management team will put together a daily program schedule as to when each television program will be aired. All of the videotapes will be assembled in our offices in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The second step will be to give the programs to a company that is best described as a satellite surfer. One such company is Crawford Communications in Atlanta. This company will beam our television network to a satellite. Once our television programs are on a satellite, then anyone who has a large dish may receive our programs. There are about 1 million homes with these in the United States. The third step will be to develop what is called a major downlink for the network. For example, we could rent a channel on DirecTV or DishNet. To receive these, you would need a small dish as you see here. Approximately 12 million homes in the United States have these satellite dishes. Another important downlink will be with the cable systems. We will endeavor to get as many companies as possible to carry the Gospel Broadcasting Network. It is thrilling to think of the potential millions that will eventually have the opportunity to hear the gospel by satellite. Our long-range plans include efforts to see the network aired in satellite systems that cover Europe, Asia, Latin America, and yes, the entire world.
The potential for the Gospel Broadcasting Network is virtually limitless. Not only will GBN be broadcasting the truth 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to millions who have not heard the restoration plea, but think of a few other scenarios. Here's a small, struggling congregation with no preacher. They will be able to tape much of the programming from GBN and use it in their Bible study and worship periods as they're teaching and preaching material. Or think of a Christian couple inviting friends over for an hour of personal work through GBN. The couple doesn't need personal work training, just willing hearts and an open door. Or what about a homemaker, perhaps a homeschooling mother, who sits down for an hour after school with her children and watches with them programs geared for them, programs dealing with Christian evidences.
Cephalosaurus. Now that's a pretty big word, but let's try it again. Pachycephalosaurus. Very good. Let's sing our dinosaur song. God made the dinosaur, God made the dinosaur to roam on.
You may be asking the question, how can I get involved? Well, obviously, we need your prayers and God's blessings in order for this to be a success. You can also help us by spreading the word about the Gospel Broadcasting Network. You can visit us on our website. Once the network is on the air, we'll not be subjecting our viewers to pleas for money. In fact, everything that's going to be a part of GBN that's offered will be free. And we'll simply be stating that the Gospel Broadcasting Network is brought to you by your friends in churches of Christ all across this nation. And I think folks are going to appreciate that.
Millions of people are tired of churches constantly begging for money. They're troubled about the empty promises they make about prosperity for those who give. If churches of Christ and individual Christians will not support the Gospel Broadcasting Network, then it will not exist. The network will be devoted entirely to teaching, preaching, and singing God's praises, not to raising money.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's a terrible war raging today. No, not a carnal conflict. Oh, we have that in the world also. But the principal battle is for your soul and mine. Satan is the god of this world. 2 Corinthians chapter 4 at verse 4. His resourcefulness is unlimited, and he is bent upon your eternal condemnation. He desires to destroy God's crowning creature, man. Can you imagine the shambles in which today we find the morals of our world? Homosexuality, sodomy touted as an alternate lifestyle. Divorce is as common as the noonday meal. Atomic power has the ability to change the landscape, but only the gospel of Jesus Christ has the power to change the hearts, the thinking of men and women. Just think of the great blessing to be part and parcel of such a broadcasting arrangement as a 24-hour-a-day gospel broadcasting network that would enable us simply to teach book, chapter, and verse of the truth that makes men free.
What a tremendous blessing to be a part of this worldwide effort to honor and to glorify the name of our Lord by a faithful proclamation of the gospel.
Let us one day stand before God in judgment and say, we used the means of mass communication you gave us in an effort to enlarge the borders of your kingdom.
Won't you be a part of this great undertaking to take the gospel to millions upon millions of souls and to bring honor and glory to God in the process?
Gospel Broadcasting Network. The truth and nothing but the truth. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Help us make it happen.
It is good being here with the four of us together. It brings back memories to me. I can think about being in the old building in Bonnie Oaks, and I can remember just us and Barry being there and dreaming about the future and talking about fundraising. And of course, Barry can't be with us. Thinking about initial fundraising back when GBN was just getting off the ground. And of course, all of us were involved in that at the time. And I'm thinking specifically about the 7,000 campaign. Whose idea was the 7,000 campaign? How did that come about?
I think probably.
Was it Barry or Jim?
Or was it yours?
I
don't
was
know.
thinking I might have thrown, yeah, you were thinking that.
I was thinking that you
think
were
that's right.
behind it.
I think that's right. The idea of, and I have 7,000 who've not bowed the knee to Baal.
Right.
And the idea of,
And that was the basis for all of it, really.
Right. That was what spawned it, I think.
It was very successful then and is still successful. We still have people that are part of the 7,000 that have been giving for 10 years. And as I go out and do appointments, people will come to me and they'll say, I'm number 300. And the idea was 7,000 people at $25 a month.
Would
Right,
equate to $2.1 million.
Yeah, something like that, because that was the projected budget that we needed to do everything we wanted to do at that time. Let people know that you don't have to do a lot, but if a lot, do a little, then.
And you know what, really and truly, if we could just achieve that today, because I mean, the annual projected budget was $2.1 million a year. I don't think we ever reached that projected budget.
No.
And you think about if we could reach that today, we could duplicate our efforts.
In fact, we are thinking about going into this next year revitalizing and revamping the 7,000 because it was so very effective, kind of a grassroots support for the network.
Right.
And a lot of our support comes from the $25 a month supporters. We could not exist were it not for them. Of course, the large amount of money that came that helped us to launch the network came from a church in Damascus, Maryland. Is that right?
That's right. Tim Kidwell was preaching there at the time, and the work had just reached a point where it was a difficult area and so forth, and I think they had determined that they were not going to continue, and they were selling their building, and as I recall, a bidding war developed among like 3 different prospective buyers, to the point that ultimately they had some other things they wanted to do with the funds once the building was sold, but we were the primary beneficiary to the tune of about $600,000. And although the projected launch date for the network was farther down the road initially, when that money came in, it enabled us to accelerate the launch date dramatically by about a year, really, from what we had projected it would be based on, raising the funds necessary. But when you get $600,000,
that's a pretty big lift.
Yeah, that's a pretty big chunk of it.
I think there were some people that gave significant amounts.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, didn't Getwell give a pretty significant amount that had been left to them
that
by
may be
Guy and Woods, I think. You remember?
I do remember something about Brother Woods' estate. Yeah, there and that. Yeah, I
recall that we have a plaque upstairs in his honor, and that might
yes,
have been
that's right.
associated
That's
with
right.
it.
I was thinking it was maybe $30,000 to $50,000 that they gave.
That's right. Because when you mentioned the plaque, that does tie in with that contribution. It sure does. They gave it in his memory because it was part of his estate. He was very generous to help Brotherhood Works.
I know you guys did a lot of brainstorming on how to raise money, and I think the 7,000, I think of all the concepts that I'm familiar with, to me that was the best, because I mean really and truly, you think about, like you said, a little carrying a lot.
Yeah.
And
we have far more than 7,000, potentially.
Yeah.
And so we were thinking that's a realistic goal.
Right.
Wonderful words of life.
We had somewhat difficulties in raising funds, but we were definitely dependent upon God's will in the raising of these funds, and which that did come along. We started off in a modest home. We were considering another location at the time while another location was being built, a larger auditorium space, videotaping space, editing space, so on and so forth. And from that point on, we were, per se, hitting the ground running. Over the past 10 years, where we are at now, it was a heartbreak that we had to give GBN up, but financial conditions and things of that nature, we were very pleased that Don Blackwell came on board, took over the leadership of the Gospel Broadcasting Network, along with the eldership from the South Haven Church of Christ. We are glad that they have took the reins, is thriving still today, financially in good shape, and it is being aired throughout the Brotherhood. We are very grateful for this and very tickled about the anniversary, the 10-year anniversary that we're having now. Thank you.
Wonderful words of life.
Jim, Jen, it's good to have you here with us. We are talking about GBN, and particularly the early days of GBN. And the two of you were very much involved in getting GBN off the ground. Everything from fundraising to staffing to bookkeeping to set design to basically everything that is GBN. In fact, the name of GBN, the two of you were involved in that. If my memory serves me correctly, the name GBN Gospel Broadcasting Network was your idea. Janice, is that correct?
Very creative, don't you think?
Okay.
Well, I think the conversation was, being conducted. What do we call this, And Janice, I think, said something to the effect, well, it's the gospel. You are broadcasting it. It's a network. Why don't you just call it the Gospel Broadcasting Network?
It works, doesn't it?
Yeah. She's always been clever like that.
All right. Now, in the very early days, the two of you relocated to Chattanooga, and we went through some studios, and offices, and the two of you actually lived in one of the offices.
Well, we had there was a small kitchenette and a shower combination, so we were clean when necessary. But then there was a large room, and we had a couple of love seats that would fold out and make twin beds. And so we arranged one love seat kind of, at a diagonal, the other over here, so that at night we would fold them out, and then we could lie there and we could discuss programming ideas and things.
A lot of the programming ideas, Fabric of Family, Barry Jr.'s program originated there on those two levels. The name of the program. Janice came up with that, and even envisioned the fabric graphic, for the introduction and so forth. And many other programming ideas were generated there.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't have far to go to work. We just get up and leave one room, go to the other.
You never stopped working, did you?
No, we never could leave it.
No.
Our son Sam had just started college at Chattanooga State, and he was actually in communications. And one of the first courses he took was video editing, and he just went flying with video editing. So by the time we were ready to start actual production and so forth, he was our first video editor. But he slept on a little cot out in what would have been the reception area. Of course, we didn't have anybody to receive at that point in time.
Right.
But then we had a large area where we did our mailing, the DVD mailing and the newsletter mailing originally. We had another room, our conference room.
And that's where Barry bought the first conference table. And it was, he got it at a real deal, and we could understand why when he brought it in.
Right.
Because the design on it, well, he said it looked like something that came out of Graceland.
Yes.
And we called it the Elvis table.
Yes.
And we still have that table.
I remember it looked like it should be in the jungle room.
Yeah, out of the jungle room at Graceland is what he said he thought it may have looked like,
And we had 7 large, what do you call them?
I don't know,
whiteboards. 7 large whiteboards, one for each day of the week, and that's where we did our original programming on those whiteboards.
Janice really, did so much for us. She wouldn't tell you a lot about it, but she was so largely responsible for the concept of being able to fill 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with a limited amount of programming at that time, obviously. And so she worked out a repeating schedule with days that, help to reduce the repetition, but at the same time allow us to fill the 24/7 slots.
In fact, when I think about the early days, I remember Barry being the dreamer and the fundraiser and the man who was making things happen. But I remember the two of you who actually created GBN, and a lot of it, the creativity, the set design, the idea, was Janice. Sometimes in the Lord's church we talk about the fact that there's not work for women to do, which is really such a silly idea, because Janice has been so very talented and done so much. So much of GBN is because of ideas and things that she made happen, and you as well. And when I think about the beginning of GBN, I think of Barry as the dreamer and the fundraiser, and I think about the two of you implementing it and making it happen. And so we owe the two of you a great debt of gratitude.
It was something that we wouldn't take anything for. It was just that kind of exciting, wonderful experience to be associated with Barry and Judy, their family, all their family. They're like our family and still are. And it was just something that was a blessing beyond our ability to describe, really.
Okay.
I really felt like in the providence of God, He had brought together our training, our education, our experience, our abilities, everything into one place where we could use all of those for the benefit of the church.
my name is Chad Dollahite from the Bremen Church of Christ in Bremen, Georgia. I'm here at the Lithia Springs Church of Christ on the set of the Fountain of Life program that airs on GBN. I'm with my good friend Leroy Dedman. We are honored to be a part of the 10th anniversary special program, and we wish GBN a very happy anniversary and look forward to many more years of broadcasting. Leroy and I both had the opportunity to work with GBN. I worked there from 2006 to 2010 as a production manager and later as a program director. Leroy, you go back to the days before there even was a GBN. The Preaching the Gospel program that aired for many years still continues to air, sort of the flagship program, and it laid the groundwork for GBN. But I know you want to share a little bit about the early days, kind of how GBN came to be.
Well, that's right, and it was a struggle. We were down in Alabama, Barry Gilreath Sr. and myself, raising funds for Preaching the Gospel. And we would call the preachers together, you know, and try to encourage them to help us. And they kept saying, why don't we have our own 24-hour, 7-day-a-week television network? We preach the gospel around the clock. Well, it sounded good and exciting in those meetings, but on the way home, Barry said, do you think we can do it? I said, do what? He said, get the network. And I thought, well, I know I can't, but I knew Barry could. I said, well, I'm sure we can do it. So he called a meeting of 50 people, key people that he put together down in Huntsville, Alabama. And I wasn't able to go, but he called me from down there. He said, what do you think about the Gospel Broadcasting Network? I said, what is that? He said, that's us. He said, we're going with it. So Jan and Jim Dearman are moving to Chattanooga, and they're going to work with us. Jan suggested this as a name, and we're going to get it registered and make sure we can use it. They moved to Chattanooga and lived in the studio 6 months. Oh, it was an exciting time to, you know, getting ready to get on the air. We made those DVDs originally, and Barry was driving back to Dalton, and they flew out of the truck all over the state.
I remember that story.
We had a lot of laughs about that, but it was exciting. But to think about 10 years, we are excited about that.
It is. It's really, really neat because, like you say, a lot of people, they saw Preaching the Gospel and what was done with that. Very excellent, well-produced program. I know you played a large part in that. And people would often say, you know, well, what's to stop us from having more than just a program? And that was the dream. And like you said, Barry Gilreath Sr. was a man who could take a dream and help it to become a reality. And he certainly did that. And, you know, we've talked before about the party that we had at the Highland Church of Christ building in the fellowship hall when GBN came on the air Thanksgiving weekend of 2005. And we were there to watch as GBN came on the air, had the KU satellite dish hooked up, and when the moment of truth came, nothing happened. Then the receiver, for some reason, couldn't pick up the signal, so we defaulted then to the internet. GBN's on the internet, and for some reason, that wouldn't work either. And what we ended up with was Jim Dearman on the phone with his sister, who had it coming through her cable system, I believe in Middle Tennessee, and she was sort of giving us the play-by-play. But that, you know, even that, experienced as it was secondhand, it was still really exciting because the dream had become a reality.
Right.
And to see, you know, I think we all know what the answer is going to be, and you and I laugh about it, but the biggest struggle early on in the network?
Money. It takes a lot of money, and of course the equipment for broadcasting is very expensive. We didn't know what we were doing. We were at the mercy of everybody else. We broke all the financial rules. We maxed out all the credit cards. Barry got $1 million line of credit and maxed it out. We paid the interest on that. We paid the minimum on the credit cards. We had to. Barry said, we've got to stay afloat till we can get enough support. And finally, Ralph Upton and Don Black within the last 3 or 4 years has made GBN debt-free, and we're so proud of that. And we're excited to be part of it in the early days.
Absolutely. And, you know, like you said, Barry said that to us individually. We talked about it at staff meetings. It was just too important to the work of the church, to spreading the gospel, to let it die. And so, you know, again, to see it debt-free now and to look even into the future, master controlling, something that you and I we would love to have seen when we were there. We didn't think that would happen for many, many years, and now GBN is right on the cusp of handling all their own master controlling. Live production that is produced right there from the GBN studio, and that was a dream of Barry Sr. And so a lot of great things going on. And Leroy, I know for myself, I've enjoyed working with you and become close friends with you as a result of that relationship that we established working together at GBN. And again, on behalf of Leroy Dedman, Chad Dollahite, we want to wish GBN a very happy 10th anniversary, and we look forward to many more years of GBN broadcasting the soul-saving gospel of Jesus Christ. We are thankful, honored, privileged to have worked with GBN in the past and to continue to work with them and support them in striving together to take the gospel of Jesus Christ to the world. Happy anniversary, GBN.
GBN has been in several different locations over the years, and some of them were short-lived. I think we're in the 4th location now.
Well, the first location was in the what was to be the new facility for WTCI, the public TV station in Chattanooga. And the plan was for us to occupy a part of that space, and then they would move in and occupy the rest of it and move their facilities, because they were on the Chattanooga State campus at that time. So our offices were there, but we couldn't shoot there. You know, we didn't have any production facilities there, just
and that's the one you lived in.
That's the one we lived in for 3 months. So we would go over to the Chattanooga State campus to the WTCI studios, and that's where we did our initial shooting there. But that was the first office location. And then
how long was that one?
Almost a year, maybe, I guess, yeah. They were going to move us, as it turned out. We weren't going to be able to stay in that part of the building, and the logistics were not going to work out. So we found just up the hill from that location was another office facility that was available. So we negotiated a lease with that, and we took the upstairs part, where the office is, and then downstairs.
The editors downstairs.
In the dungeon.
The dungeon.
Yes.
Right. But you couldn't get from the upstairs to the downstairs without going outside and around the building.
I remember that.
You know, those editors are a little different.
Right. And that's when you joined GBN, wasn't it,
Yes, sir.
Adam? Okay. Adam has been with GBN for, what, 9 years now?
Yes, sir.
About 9 years, and it was in that second facility when Adam came on with us, so he remembers a lot of this history.
Mm-hmm. And you really couldn't ask for a better employee in terms of just the attitude, the ability to grow. And
Adam is outstanding. I've oftentimes said, if you need something done, just give it to Adam, and you don't have to think about it again. It gets done.
Right.
So that was the Bonnie Oaks facility.
That was the Bonnie Oaks. Both were on Bonnie Oak. Well, one was Industrial Drive or Bonnie Shire Drive, which was just off Bonnie Oaks, and then just up the hill was the second location. That's when the plans began to try to find a larger facility so that everybody could be together and not have to go outside to go around from one end to the other.
We also brought on a receptionist secretary.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I remember that.
Right.
Yeah. Chris Applewhite was our first receptionist secretary, just a very fine Christian lady who did such a good work for us. Yeah.
And then we moved to the large facility that was actually not in Chattanooga.
Right. That was technically a Ringgold, Georgia address, but just over the line. It's greater Chattanooga area.
Very nice studio setup that we had there.
Right, and we were able for the first time there to actually house a studio audience for some events, and we did that. We had James Watkins come in to do a series of lessons there with a live audience there. Of course, it was taped, but a live audience at the time it was taped. And we did our first marathon, I guess you would say,
I remember that.
streaming online from there as well.
Yeah, we ran 24 hours continuously, didn't we?
Yes, we sure did. We ran that in shifts, and everybody took his turn.
36-hour shift.
Bringing back a lot of memories of things I've forgotten. So we were in that facility for how many years?
From December of 2008, I want to say, till 2011, I guess, when we...
January of 2012 is when we relocated to the facility.
So about 3 years there.
Right, where we are now, just across the line from Memphis. There we were just outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Right.
Now we're just outside of Memphis, Tennessee, and Olive Branch, Mississippi.
And this is a tremendous facility.
The editing situation is a lot better here than it was back on Bonnie Oaks. Back there, you'd back up and you'd run into the guy behind you.
Yeah,
There's 5 of us in that little
if you go
room.
back to those days.
That
That's
big
right.
fan.
Right.
Yeah.
This we've been talking about the providence of God. This facility, several years before we moved in, had appraised at $880,000, and we came in and offered them. If memory serves me correctly, it was like $349,000 for this, or it was $389,000 for this facility, and they took it. Wow. And so again, I think the providence of God was at work. That I say we stumbled across it, but maybe part of a greater plan.
Yeah.
Of course, it's paid off, and we've built a nice studio here, and as Adam has said, we've got a good arrangement for the editors, and the Lord's blessing the work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
No matter what's happening in the world, there is good news today.
Good news.
Jim, let's talk about the Good News Today program. When GBN started and we were trying to think of programming to begin with, how did Good News Today come into the picture?
Well, it was really Barry's brainchild, and he had the concept of a magazine format, which was unique to the Brotherhood, really, and with different segments, shorter segments, and with the inclusion of current events being discussed from a biblical perspective. You know, topics that come up, moral issues, et cetera, that make their way into the news, and what the biblical perspective is on those things. And so that's something that is still a part of the program from time to time, as well as questions and answers. But we have different taped segments, and those segments have varied over the years. But initially, the program was 58 and a half minutes long, and we would do 3 new ones per week, and then those would repeat, you know, at various times. But ultimately, down the road, we were doing 6 per week, one of which was a Saturday program geared for young people. And so we were doing 6 58 and a half minute programs. And
that's when we had Deeker the dog, right?
That's right, Deeker the dog, and Janice would write the scripts for Deeker,
Right.
you know, another one of her her abilities to do. Barry was the initiator of that program, and even though Good News Today is no longer a part of the network as far as being network tied to the network, but on the network and under a separate oversight situation with the Dunlap congregation now, still very cooperative, obviously, and it still maintains that format with Leroy Dedman doing a segment regularly for us, Leaving a Legacy, and David Smith doing the Be Ready Always segment, Steve Hall doing a segment called Challenges, and of course Adam is absolutely crucial to that, because in addition to working for GBN, he also works with Good News Today editing that program, which airs on GBN, so we're cooperating and working together in that respect.
Now, we thought you did all your own editing.
Oh yeah, because I'm such an expert with the Roku and how to install that. Right. No, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about Good News Today in the present if it were not for Adam Vaughn.
Right.
I could assure you, from that standpoint, he does a beautiful job for us in editing that. And of course, it's one of the programs that we appreciate still being aired on the network, and I think about 3 times a week we're aired on GBN, and soon to be completely high def with our production on it. So many strides we've been able to make. Of course, at White Oak, where I still preach now, but we'll be transitioning in a little over a year and giving up local work and just working full-time with the program and doing gospel meeting work. At that location now, we have men who volunteer their time and do a beautiful job for us. Brian Sorello, one of our members there, Jerry Wright, another one of our members, Tommy Leslie, who works with us as an associate there. All of these men volunteer their time to help us produce the program there, and of course it goes to Adam. The technology today is so good that it can all be sent to him, and he can send out that finished product.
Adam, how long have you been editing Good News Today?
Oh, it's got to be right at 9 years, I believe so. I think I started on episode 160.
160. So there have been 100.
I just finished episode 1133 this week.
Okay, so how many total episodes now?
1133.
1133.
1133 episodes.
Yeah.
And Good News Today has aired on GBN continuously from day one. We have had Good News Today airing.
Right. Yeah, when I came on, Sam was doing all the editing, and he did a good job showing me how to do it and taking me through the program.
Yeah. So. How long does it take you to edit one program?
Oh, from very start, if it's just the edit, I'd say an hour.
An hour, okay.
But the entire process, probably
6 hours.
How have you seen the program change since you started doing the editing?
It's changed drastically. I mean, we started off 640 by 480 frame size, and over the years 720, 480, and then now we're doing 1920 by 1080. We're able to distribute to multiple places, DVDs, closed captioning.
So now you're doing HD quality?
Yes, sir.
So we have HD close-up shots of Jim Dearman now.
Every wrinkle.
It's pretty scary.
Right.
Yeah, and I have no idea what he just said about all those numbers either. But that's why we have him.
Right. Okay. Well, we appreciate what Good News Today has meant to the network, and we're thankful that you have continued to produce it for these years, and it has meant a lot to the Brotherhood, not only airing on GBN, but also on a number of outlets around the country.
Right.
And we thank Adam for the good work that he does there, and also as our head editor here at the Gospel Broadcasting Network.
Yeah, he's doing great work, and we appreciate what GBN has meant to Good News Today as well. And it's a mutually beneficial and cooperative effort, and we appreciate it very much.
No matter what else is happening in the world,
Always good news, good news.
there is always good news today.
Cliff, it's hard to imagine that Gospel Broadcasting Network has been on now for 10 years, and especially preaching the gospel. Brother James Watkins is one of my heroes, and I know he's someone that you love too.
He really is. He did a tremendous work with preaching the gospel for so long, and really laid a foundation, I believe, to an extent, for GBN as an entity. And for me to be able to try to continue that work, I am very grateful for that privilege.
Friends especially, I remember the day when Brother Barry Gilreath Sr. called me and asked if I would be interested here at the studio here in Pulaski to actually tape Preaching the Gospel with Brother Watkins. At that time, I told him that he has been one of my heroes for literally 45 years. At that time, it was 35 years. Back in 1970, I followed him around just to record some of the sermons that he held and presented in gospel meetings. We started at number 565, that number program, and he's now at 800, so over 200. So it's been an amazing series of lessons that he's done, and he's approaching 90 years of age. We're not quite that age yet, but we're still preaching the same gospel, aren't we?
That's the beautiful thing about the true gospel, is it's timeless. From generation to generation, from method to method, some of those things change, but the gospel never changes, and it's just important that we keep that in mind.
You've been on several other programs as well, Searching the Scripture and Thy Word is Truth, literally a couple of hundred plus on that, and it's an honor, though, for any of us to be a part of GBN when we consider the number of people, you friend, that we're able to talk with, study with. We're just thrilled that GBN is in existence, now celebrating 10 years. And just think, maybe we can come back in another 10 years and talk about how many more hundreds you've actually done.
God willing, that would be wonderful. I deem it a privilege, and there's no greater message that we can devote our time and our energies to than the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Mike, I'm sitting here thinking about the early days of GBN. I remember one of the early videos we did trying to promote the network, when at the time we were thinking about pushing KU dishes to get people to purchase those. And I remember you were in that video. I remember seeing you squatting down next to that satellite dish and explaining how it happens and how it works.
Barry wanted a shot of that to try to sell the Brotherhood on the concept. And really I think his intent was that if we could get a satellite dish in the homes of our members, then it would help to edify or to build up the church, and then that would help us by way of evangelism. And so we found a place in South Haven, probably August of that year, hot. You know, Barry had a lot of vision in the sense that he felt like if we could get satellite dishes in our members' homes, that ultimately it would lead to spiritual growth, which would in turn lead to numerical growth.
Sure. Now, of course, we know things have kind of taken a turn. The KU dish plan did not take off. We have gone a different direction. for cost reasons and also availability of scaling and reaching people. We've used the Roku, we've used the apps, and of course, we want to continue growing GBN. That's going to involve several things. It's going to involve money. You've done a great job helping GBN to raise funds, both in the early days, and you've continued to do that. Of course, you're with us on the live program and do a fantastic job. You don't work for us full time, but I feel like you're part of the staff here. You're a regular around here. We see you several times a week, and you're very valuable to the network, and we appreciate everything that you do. I want to talk a minute about where we're going to go in the future.
One thing I'm really excited about, that initial idea of trying to use satellites to cover the globe, fantastic vision. But through the use of internet technology, we can get everywhere much less expensively. We're just now finishing up a big project where we're bringing our play out of our programming in-house. And the equipment that we purchased, the minimum size was 2 channels. Well, we've got our existing channel, and actually the gentleman who manages the company that sold us that, he said, "What are you going to do with the second channel?" And kind of challenged me. You've got it there, put it to use.
Sure.
Use it in the Lord's work. So multiple languages, 1.2 billion people that understand Mandarin Chinese, and nearly 1 billion over in India. We're already on in English in India.
Sure.
So a step to a local language is very logical for us.
Absolutely.
And what's to me so encouraging is we've taken the big step. These are just little incremental steps from here.
And of course, you can't just flip the switch and be gigantic overnight. And so we've got a vision for growing. And Mike, we've been talking about some of these things. What are some of the thoughts you've had?
Well, I was just thinking about, as Mark was talking about, how Paul often prayed that a door would be open to share the gospel, and doors have been opened, and sometimes, just like in any business or corporation, you have to tweak and maybe modify things, and so we've kind of gone where technology has led us, but I think that there are opportunities for us. We've mentioned the live program, trying to get that on a nationwide scale. Counterpoint, BJ and I have done that for quite a while, and I think that we have lots of opportunities. Really, I think what holds us back is just limited funds, and the more money we have, the more opportunities we have to share the gospel. And I mean, you as the director of GBN, wouldn't it be great if your primary task was trying to take the money that comes in and use that to expand the base
instead of spending so much time trying to raise the money just to operate?
Absolutely.
I have oftentimes made the statement that on the day of judgment, the Lord may say, "Why did you not take the gospel to the entire world?" And someone may respond, "Well, Lord, how could we? There's 8 billion people," to which He could very well respond, "I gave you the technology.
That's right.
I gave you the resources. Why did you not use them?"
Mark, he talked about all the different technologies that are available, and I know that you're very up to date on that. And I think that as opportunities continue to come before us in God's providence, don't you think that God is giving us these tools to help us achieve His goal of evangelizing the world?
Absolutely, absolutely. I do believe that. I know the devil uses these tools, but it's just like money. It can be used for good or for evil, and the Lord expects us to use them in His service. I hope in 2016 and 2017 that we will see the GBN Live program airing nationally in this country. I hope and pray that we will see the Counterpoint program that you and BJ Clark are a part of, airing nationally in this country. That program has done so much good.
We've had, 3 baptisms? It hadn't even been on locally in the Memphis market for a year. 3 baptisms already from that program. Just imagine what it could do nationwide.
And it could be there's someone watching this program right now who hears this and thinks, I'm a member of the Lord's church and I want to support this good work.
Which would be a great thing. I do want to say just very quickly that I know, this is the 10-year anniversary, and providentially, I think God has put in place the right pieces to make up the puzzle here. And I appreciate all the efforts and the leadership that you and Mark have given, and of course the eldership at South Haven. And I really believe that GBN is in great hands, and I have a lot of confidence in this network, and I'm very grateful to have a limited role in what's going on here. And I think that the best days for this network are ahead. We just need brethren to get behind us and to help us share this dream.
What a wonderful, wonderful day, day I will never forget. After I'd wandered in darkness away, Jesus my Savior I met.
As we think about expanding, one of the things you had a great idea about, Mark, was one way that we could approach cable stations so that we could expand. We have approximately, 25 to 30 cable stations now. We want to increase that number. Share your idea with us.
Yeah, one of the things that to some people has always been a challenge is getting on cable systems. You know, the big boys, they want millions of dollars. Where we've done well has been the small cable system, the mom and pops, that they've been very eager to embrace us. And in that situation, the thought there is, if we can get cable systems who are interested, and we can come back and I can say, hey, we'll buy a receiver for you. You know, your cable system may only be hitting 50,000 people, but we'll buy the receiver, several $1,000s, put it in there.
So that it costs them nothing.
Costs them nothing, that they can walk in, and I think that's something cable systems can get excited about. You know, within the cable industry, they're paying literally millions and millions and millions of dollars to these big networks for their programming, and here we are, we'll give you a receiver to get in the door to spread the gospel message.
And the channel is free forever.
Yeah, it doesn't cost them a thing, gives them good programming, and allows very possibly for us to expand our footprint very significantly in the next year or two.
Yeah.
Great idea.
This is my Father's world, and to my listening ears, all nature sings, and round me rings the music of the sphere.
We talked earlier about the dream and about the beginning of GBN. What would your father think about where we are now?
I have no doubt whatsoever that if Dad had the opportunity to peer on this side of life and to see what's taking place with GBN, that he would be absolutely thrilled. He would be thrilled, and he would be very humbled and by what some of the discussion has been today about him. But he would just be ecstatic because he wanted this work to succeed. And a lot of the individuals who are involved with GBN in a very influential way, including yourself, Don, Dad handpicked. I mean, when he thought about the fact that he would have to step away, and there was a need for someone to assume the position as director, you were who he thought of. And Jim, I think about Jim and Janice Dearman were some of his greatest friends. Yeah. And if he were able to see them still involved with the network and providing programming, to see myself involved with it, he would just be thrilled. And one thing that I want to mention, Don, that he would especially be excited about is the radio work that GBN's getting into right now. Yeah. My dad, from a teenager, he worked as a disc jockey in a radio station in the community in which he grew up in. He'd go to high school, and then he'd get out of class, and he would go to work at the radio station.
I never knew that.
Well, there's many things I could tell you probably didn't know, but he loved radio. He was a ham radio operator all of his life, and if he could see that aspect of GBN now, that would be something that would especially thrill him.
You know, I can remember when Barry was reaching the end of his life, that of course his health was very poor, and he was struggling for that reason, and he was concerned deeply about the future of GBN, and we were seeking to relocate at that time, and we had secured a new eldership, and I remember that gave him great peace of mind. Jim, can you comment on that? You were working closely with Barry then, and particularly when he was feeling the stress and hoping to secure GBN's future before he passed from this life?
Well, I do know from conversations I recall having with him at that time that he was very, very pleased about the transition and felt that it would be extremely good for the network in terms of securing the network's long-term future. And so I think we can all feel very good about how he felt in those final days, because he was optimistic based on what he saw and the leadership that he felt that you would bring and others would bring, and that transition itself would bring to not only keeping the network going, but keeping it growing. And that was his desire, obviously.
Barry, do you think it would be accurate to say that, in a sense, your dad worked himself to death?
I mean, I can tell you what the doctor said, and you know, his doctor had told him that if he didn't stop what he was doing, that he wasn't going to live very long. And of course, he had some debilitating illnesses that he had been battling for many years, but it had gotten to that point to where if he wanted his life to last much longer, he had to stop. But you know, he couldn't stop because this was the dream, and this was, you know, the baby, and the baby has learned to walk, and now the baby needs to learn to run. And so I truly believe, as well as, like I said, his physician told him that because of the fact that he kept on, he shortened his life, and he knew that. And it's just amazing to me the stamina that he had, even going into the last few months of his life, last few weeks, last few days. He was at an elders meeting I think it was the day before, the night before he passed away. And I remember my mom talking about how that she had to actually drive him to the elders meeting because he just physically couldn't do it. And how that he had to just hold himself up on a wall to keep from falling over. That's how weak he had gotten. And then he passed away in the middle of the night. And of course we were surprised by that. We thought we were going to have him a little bit longer, but you know, God really blessed him in that he gave him a very peaceful death. And you know, I like to think that he closed his eyes to go to sleep and he awoke to see paradise. But yeah, it is something that I firmly believe. And I think that demonstrates to us how we're to consider ourselves here on this earth. We're not here for our own benefit. We're here as a tool in the hand of God. And we need to have that same mindset. I'm going to work as long as I have the health. And even if I don't have the health, I'm going to still do what I can do.
I remember the last day that we saw him, Janice and I were down at the offices, and he was using a motorized chair that my mother-in-law had used before her death. We brought it down, and Barry was taking advantage of that to be able to get around the building. And he was there in Wanda Hackney's office there, and we were talking with him, and we said, well, you know, we were saying goodbye for the day, and he said, well, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be, I plan to be here. I plan to be here. And it was that night that he died. But that illustrates the determination he had for as long as he could, he was going to be
involved. And really that determination he put into the network, and it's almost an irony because he, in a very real sense, lives on through the network and the work that he's done.
Oh, absolutely.
Lives that he's touched, people who have obeyed the gospel and are continuing to obey the gospel.
That's right.
Because of those things that he did.
That's right.
And he obviously viewed that what he was doing was worth that sacrifice, and because he viewed the spiritual more important than the physical.
You know, Barry was a very unique individual. When he made up his mind to do something, he wouldn't let anything or anyone stop him from reaching his goals. Some people might say that was stubborn, which I used to call him stubborn, but this was an attitude that he had when he began talking about and planning for GBN. And I think that's really enabled him to carry out his plans for GBN. You know, there were many discouragements. I remember telling Barry and Janice and Jim Dearman in the very beginning that, you know, this was going to be something great for the Lord's church, and that the devil was going to pull out every tool he had in his toolbox, so they better get ready. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Many of the discouraging things, though, I think came from, surprisingly, members of the church. They would make comments like, this is a fantasy. We can't do this. This is too big. I purchased a plaque for him that said dream, and he had that in his office till the day he died. And we would talk about how it's not a fantasy, it's a dream. And if you have a dream and plans for things you're going to do in the Lord's church, God will support that. I have that plaque in my office now. But he used to say, if denominations can have their 24/7 TV stations, why can't the church? After all, we have God on our side. And God has always provided what we needed for GBN. Barry would talk about the providence of God, and sometimes, especially when finances were low, God always provided. Barry definitely, I would say, walked by faith and not by sight where GBN was concerned, and especially sometimes in the area of finances, because there would be a need for GBN, and Barry and the other elders at Highland would personally go to the bank and sign loans, and they would borrow money because they had the faith that God would provide. And Barry always trusted that whatever they needed for GBN, that it would be there, and it always was. Barry's health began to fail in the last few years, and when the doctor was telling him he needed to slow down, it seemed like he was even more determined and worked harder for GBN, because he wanted to make sure that GBN was going to be around after he was gone. I can still see the sense of relief that I saw come over him when he found out that the elders at South Haven were going to assume the responsibility of GBN, because the elders at Highland were wonderful, godly men, but they were all getting up in age and had a lot of health problems, and he wanted to make sure that GBN was going to be here long after he was gone. I used to tell him that he wouldn't know until he got to heaven. Sorry, Adam. I used to tell Barry that he wouldn't know until he got to heaven the good that GBN had done. We used to laugh about how he would be walking down the street and he'd meet someone that would say, "I'm here because of GBN." And I know he would be so proud of the accomplishments that GBN is making and where they are today, because he had so much respect for the elders at South Haven and the men who are leading GBN now. I like to think that when I get to heaven, I can tell him that GBN is doing great.
We've talked a lot about Barry today, and I know the two of you were very close with Barry, who has gone on to his reward, and Judy, who is still with us. And I know that you spent a lot of time together. You had a lot of good memories together. Can you share with us just some fun stories, some good memories you have of Barry and Judy?
Well, I think about, at one point in time, Judy obtained a Mustang convertible, and Barry would call and say, "Hey, why don't we go out riding in the convertible?" And we would just kind of turn on the radio and these oldie songs, on the radio back to, because we're about the same age, so.
You're older than I am.
Well, I'm older than she is, that's right, but not by a lot. And so, we were, I would tell the story about we were riding in this convertible, and I had my arm up, and you're feeling young again. You're out riding in a convertible and
looking really silly.
Probably looking really silly. But then, and I'm thinking, boy, you feel great, and then you notice that as you put your arm up and you're in a convertible and the wind is blowing, all the skin on my arm is waving. And I thought, ooh. And I thought, what if some kid, I can picture some kid with his mother on the side of the road saying, "Mom, look at that man.
What's wrong with his skin?
Look what's happening to his arm. What's wrong with him?" So
I know Barry had a lot of fun with that story.
We had a lot of fun with that. But, just so many meals together, Just,
it was a bedtime weight-wise. That was our R&R. Let's go eat, so that was it.
Go eat, and where are we having lunch today, and so forth. And then Judy would meet us at times for dinner, and you talk about the network too, but just so many good times, just getting so close. I mean, Barry, was like a brother to me. I mean, really, not just a brother in Christ, but just that close.
Right. This is the 10-year anniversary, and I was thinking back to when GBN launched, the creator of GBN was my grandfather, Barry Gilreath Sr. During that time, there was a lot that was happening within the family and a lot that was happening with GBN that was exciting. We were all, convinced that what Barry Gilreath Sr. was planning was something that was heavenly, something that God wanted. Barry Gilreath Sr., he always planned a lot of things. We often teased him about all the different things that he got into over the years with chocolate, with horses. He had a lot to do with country music, and he had a popcorn business, and we oftentimes like to tease him about all the different things that he liked to get into. But there was something different about GBN, perhaps because it was of a higher calling, and he poured his heart and soul into the work, and me being his grandson, I was blessed to be able to see how much he cared about making this a reality, and he was very impactful on me, and I enjoyed working at GBN for a small time and working with a lot of the staff there, and those men there in GBN really influenced me to decide to preach the gospel of Christ.
Words of life, beautiful words, wonderful words.
The Gospel Broadcasting Network facility is dedicated with tremendous gratitude to the cherished friends and supporters of the great GBN effort. The wall is described by the words, "leaving a legacy." But had it not been for the work of Barry Gilreath Sr., there might be no legacy. In truth, the wall and the legacy it proclaims are an outgrowth of his own life's legacy of love for Christ, love for souls, and dedication to the work of the Lord. Barry Gilreath Sr. was born to Russell and Mattie Lee Gilreath in rural northwest Georgia, March 18, 1946. His parents farmed, raised livestock, and owned a small grocery store in their Chautauqua County community. His parents assumed their son, when grown, would plant his feet in the home soil and pursue the family business. Technology flourished in the United States in the 1950s, and television came to Chautauqua County. One of Barry's favorite recollections is his childhood fascination with a neighbor's television, the first in the community. He recalls his family's weekly visits to the neighbor's house, where they sat in another room while watching TV because of the harmful radiation it supposedly emitted. Who would have dreamed that from that simple time and introduction to television, Barry and his interest in the medium would become an integral part of one of the greatest evangelistic broadcasting outreaches in the Churches of Christ, Gospel Broadcasting Network. Among Barry's childhood memories is that of his parents' divergent spiritual paths on Sunday mornings. His father met with a small rural group of Baptists, and his mother was a member of the Church of Christ. As he grew older, Barry compared the teachings of the two religious groups to the standard of God's Word. At age 16, he obeyed the gospel of Christ during a meeting at the South Commerce Church of Christ in Somerville, where a young gospel preacher, James Watkins, was preaching. Brother Watkins baptized Barry into Christ. Perhaps only God, in His providence, knew the paths of the young boy and the talented young preacher would join down the years of time and lead them to glorious, productive work in the kingdom. As he matured, Barry's talents, interests, and training prepared him for such a time of service to the Lord. As a teenager interested in mass communications, he earned a license to operate a shortwave radio. This opened doors for him, and he secured a job as an announcer for a local radio station, which provided valuable training in broadcasting. Having a love for music, Barry was an active member of his high school band, and later obtained both bachelor's and master's degrees in music education from Jacksonville State University in Jacksonville, Alabama. While at Jacksonville State, Barry was an active member of the Jacksonville Church and worked with the college-age students. During the early college years there, Barry married his high school sweetheart, Judy Lenderman, who became the mother of his 3 children, Barry Jr., Leslie, and Melissa. After graduation, Barry began a career in teaching at several high schools, including his high school alma mater, and a number of years later at Boyd Buchanan School in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where he was the band director. Out of his interest in music and his association with talented singers within the church, he conceived the idea of the Wonderful Word Chorus. He organized and directed the group composed of members of the church from the Chattanooga area. While serving with the Ridgedale congregation, Barry was instrumental in producing the first local television program, The Wonderful Word, overseen by the Ridgedale elders. The program had an interview format, with Barry's interviewing guests and leading discussions of Bible topics, and featured the beautiful a cappella singing of the Wonderful Word Chorus. Barry had been the associate at Ridgedale for only a couple of months when the minister, Bill Parsons, was diagnosed with terminal cancer and died a few months later. Barry assumed Brother Parsons' responsibilities. He also served as evangelist for a number of other churches in the area, Eastdale in Chattanooga, and the Lafayette, Bryan Street, Lyerly, Pleasant Grove, and Chickamauga congregations in northwest Georgia. He is now an elder of the Highland Church of Christ in Dalton, Georgia. In 1997, because of his love for James Watkins and his respect for the evangelist's powerful preaching, Barry proposed to Brother Watkins that he spread his influence via the medium of television. From this beginning, with the oversight of the Chickamauga Church of Christ, with Barry as coordinator, and with the bold and persuasive preaching of James Watkins, Preaching the Gospel had its beginning. Now in its 12th year, and under the oversight of the Highland Church of Christ in Dalton, Georgia, Preaching the Gospel airs on more than 30 broadcast television stations, on DirecTV and Dish Network, and several times weekly on the Gospel Broadcasting Network, with both stateside coverage and international coverage via the Internet. Encouraged by the record of success with Preaching the Gospel, early in 2004, Barry formulated a challenging new proposal for the Highland Elders, the most ambitious and extensive evangelistic effort of the Brotherhood in this age of technology, Gospel Broadcasting Network, a television network presenting the truth and nothing but the truth of God's Word, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The Highland Elders, men of vision, rose to the challenge and took upon their shoulders the task of overseeing the realization of that dream, with Barry Gilreath Sr. as executive director of the project. On June 25, 2004, a group of faithful and well-respected men in the Brotherhood met in Huntsville, Alabama, to discuss the proposal and plan for Gospel Broadcasting Network. Tom Holland, James Watkins, Alan Webster, late Don McWhorter, E. Claude Gardner, Don Blackwell, and others discussed the massive undertaking. The consensus was to forge ahead, with the hope that with the Lord's blessing, GBN would be an effective tool to change lives and strengthen spirituality, even to move a nation and a world closer to God. With the financial cooperation of Christians across the nation, the dream became a reality Thanksgiving weekend 2005, when the Gospel Broadcasting Network went on the air, with 24/7 preaching and teaching of the gospel, and with periods of beautiful a cappella singing of praise to the glory of Him who made it all possible. Some call Barry Gilreath Sr. a dreamer. Some call him a man of vision, but all call Barry Gilreath Sr. motivated by love for Christ and love for souls. This love shows in his preaching and teaching, in his shepherding, in this network and building, but most of all, in his heart of tenderness and the tears he sometimes sheds for others. He is loved by his family and friends and by those who work with him and under his direction. He is respected by all for his efforts to advance the borders of the kingdom, to strengthen the soundness and spirituality of the church, and to make and leave this world a better place because of his presence in it.
He speaks to me everywhere. This is my Father's world. Oh, let me ne'er forget that though the wrong is the ruler yet. This is my Father's world. The battle is not done. Jesus.
We've spent a lot of time in this program talking about the past 10 years, but we want you to know that at GBN, we are focused on the future. It is our intent to carry the gospel into the whole world, and we're not going to stop until we do that.